I'd like to call this regular school board meeting to order. It is June 20th, 2022 at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room in the Jamestown Middle School. I'd like to recognize all those in the audience. And just a note, we appreciate the spring sports participants here, and we will move you up here after the school board norms, just so you can get your other things this evening. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gail, would you read the school board norms, please?
Sure. The board developed norms are to share and respect varied opinions and speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, to prudently prioritize resources in a student-centric manner that aligns with the district's strategic plan, to exhibit a mindset of continuous improvement through adequate preparation for meetings and a commitment to board education, to commit to assessing board effectiveness to ensure high-quality governance for staff, students, and the community of Jamestown.
Thank you, Gail. And now we'll do our spring sports recognition. Jason and Diane, would you read your portions, please? And as we announce your name, please come up over here, and we have a little gift for you. And then go to the, we do all at one time. Yep, and then just come stand up here, line up for a picture, and then we'll, parents, feel free to come all the way up here. You don't have to stand way back there and take photos, so please feel free to do that. Go ahead.
So, congratulations to the following. Baseball, Connor Hoyt, all conference. Softball, Jenna Fisher, all conference and all state. Katie Falk, all conference. McKenna Nold, all conference. Girls soccer, Haley Nelson, all conference, all state first team. Olivia Sorley, all conference, all state second team. And Brenna Hatch, all conference.
And recognizing our tennis and track and field athletes, girls tennis, Phoebe Olson, all conference, all state, West Region Senior Athlete nominee, WDA singles champion, NDHSAA state singles runner-up. Boys track and field, Thomas Ulmer, WDA conference champion in discus. Girls track and field, Yolanda Nabwe, WDA conference champion in 100-meter hurdles and runner-up in 100 meters, NDHSAA state runner-up in 100-meter hurdles and third in 100 meters. Antoinette Nabwe, WDA conference champion in 100-meter, shot put, discus, and javelin. NDHSAA state champ in shot put, discus, and javelin. Shot put at 49 feet 10 inches, state record. Placed third in the 100 meters. Congratulations.
Thank you. We enjoy recognizing our student achievements. I want to mention that board member Melissa Gleason is joining us by phone right now. She's en route and will join us in person shortly, but she's on the phone. Moving forward with public communication, and we have one public communication tonight. Please come forward, state your name, and yep, Darnell, yep, come forward. Thank you for filling out the application. And for public communication, you have, state your name and address, your topic, and you have about 3 to 5 minutes. When you get close, I'll kind of give you a wave just so you have a little time to wrap up.
Okay,
So,
that
thank you.
sounds good. My name is Dernell Denning. My wife and I, Tracy, own Central Business Systems, a local company in town. I live at 1501 Second Avenue Northeast, and I sent you guys all email and some breakdowns of about the contract for the copier bid. Hopefully everybody has them. If you don't, I got some copies. But just wanted to highlight a few of them. From my understanding, we're talking to another board member that we were off by a point for against the grading system, and I guess I don't know the grading system. But I guess the one thing, as I explained in my email, is that the one thing, there were a couple things that weren't looked at as far as the two proposals. One being the staples, of course, and I think I highlighted that as at 105 boxes of staples, and I guess I was going by $110 a box based on what I got from another customer that the competitor was charging. Basically, over 5 years, as you can see, we would actually be cheaper. The other thing is the service. I mean, you guys, hopefully you realize that we're a local tax-paying company. We got technicians in town. When the copiers are down Monday morning, 2 or 3 of them are down, we can dispatch multiple technicians. A company that's coming out of state, yeah, they're gonna probably dispatch 1, but are they gonna dispatch 2 or 3? And, you know, you gotta take that into account. The other thing is the parts. We stock parts, supplies, everything right there. So if something breaks, we just go downtown, pick up the part, bring it back. There again, if you're coming from another city, Fargo, Bismarck, St. Cloud, wherever, you're not going to be back. You're not coming back to get the parts, coming back and getting them. So, and believe me, when you got copiers like you guys run them, some of the machines have 5 million copies on after 5 years. So the first year is going to be great. The second year is going to work okay. The third, fourth, and fifth year, there's going to be a lot of problems. And I don't care what brand you buy. It all has to do with service. And I'm hoping that you guys can hopefully understand where I'm coming from as a local business owner, tax-paying business owner, obviously. Have a number of buildings, some houses in town. And I guess if you guys do have any questions, you can certainly, I mean, obviously, hopefully I laid that out pretty easily, my email. But I would really appreciate your vote, and hopefully we can keep that, all the taxpayers' money in Jamestown instead of sending it to Minnesota and you know, not turning any money over here. So I appreciate it, and I guess that's all I got, unless, and I can't take questions, so. Thank you.
Thank you, Dernell. Moving forward, under conflicts of interest, are there any conflicts of interest to declare this evening for this agenda? I actually have a conflict of interest to declare. Under 4B, I don't feel comfortable voting for that. I'm not related to the person, but I grew up on the same farm together and know them very personally, so I'm not comfortable voting on that. And I was not the board member that was on the committee for the proposals. So, any other conflicts? Okay, thank you. Moving on, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Gail, second by Diane. Any discussion? And anything you'd like pulled off to put on the regular agenda? Okay, great. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Moving into our regular meeting, we've already done our recognition and appreciate our students coming for that. Any correspondence this evening? Okay. Reports. Mr. Olson, would you come forward and share the activities report?
Good evening. Thanks for having me here tonight. A variety of things I'd like to just share with you as far as a report here on activities, not just necessarily a spring activities wrap up, but kind of a little, I guess, a condensed version of what kind of took place this past year and some things maybe going forward that we need to maybe be on our radar with and so on. But I want to share some things with you, first of all. a state football championship. Gymnastics is a team state runner-up. WDA boys hockey regular season champions. West Region hockey tournament champions. Boys hockey at state consolation champions. Girls hockey consolation champions. Those consolation championships at state tournament means that they won 2 games, lost 1. Lost their first game and then won their next 2. Boys wrestling, they took 4th in team duels, but turned around on the team individual day and ended up 2nd in team scoring. Very impressive there with them. Our speech team took 3rd place at the state speech meet right here in Jamestown. Our softball, our girls fast pitch team, they were consolation champions this past spring right here in Jamestown. Baseball also did the same, consolation champions at the state baseball tournament. The girls track and field team placed 3rd at the state meet. Quite an undertaking for a team of our size. Our JHS choir was selected as the governor's choir again for 2022-23 school year. Pretty impressive. You know, we had numerous individual state champions and runners-up. You saw some of those here this spring. I'll allude to Phoebe Olson, who is our girls tennis player. What she accomplished hasn't been done since probably about back in 1985 or abouts there, that we've had an individual in a championship match like that. So very impressive, just one more example of some things that are happening. You know, this year was exciting. We had a girls wrestling as a sport in its inaugural season, and you know, we didn't have a complete full team, but the girls that did compete did well. And more importantly, you saw just growth in them individually. You know, obviously they connected to school in a way that they hadn't before, and you could just see the morale of those students and their demeanor as they walked around the school. Absolutely a 180 and change for the better. Some things that we also hosted that we successfully hosted, and we do some annual events. You know, we have a 9th grade volleyball invitation annually that we host at the end of August that typically varies anywhere from 20 to 26 teams that we bring in on a Saturday. And we once again held that at Jerry Meyer Arena and the Two Rivers Activity Center and had a very successful tournament there. You know, we've become more or less a semi-permanent site for State A boys and girls Class A and Class B state cross country out at Parkhurst, and we held that out there this past fall. We annually host the Cavendish Farms Middle School Wrestling Tournament, the KC Wrestling Tournament as well for our varsity at Jerry Meyer Arena. You know, we held the WDA Girls Conference Wrestling, the very first conference wrestling tournament in Jamestown in connection with the West Region Boys Wrestling Tournament right in Jerry Meyer Arena. We hosted our conference WDA Gymnastics meet there as well. Annually, Class B region boys and girls Class B tournaments at Jamestown Civic Center are hosted by Jamestown Public Schools in that facility. Annually, we also host state Class A speech meet at Jamestown High School, as well as then this spring we had the Class A softball and baseball tournaments as well at Trapper Field and Jack Brown Stadium. Now, those are just the events that we host. We also host in our community Class B plays is hosted on the campus University of Jamestown. There's also, in the past, we've also hosted Class A music. That is, again, University of Jamestown hosted those facilities. So we have a variety of things that we annually host that we're bringing in people into the community. So when you're seeing everybody talking about economic development and dollars, know that JPS, we're doing our part in the community to help bring these things in, and not only on state tournaments or regional tournaments, but annually in invites and those types of events as well. Looking ahead next year, 22-23 school year, we're going to be the site for West Region State A Girls Golf out at Jamestown Country Club. We'll be the host as well for WDA Girls Swimming and Diving here at the JHS Pool. Once again, the state cross country will be here at Parkhurst. We will be the site for Class A state gymnastics. Once again, we'll do the Region 3 basketball tournaments at the Civic Center, host those. We'll have State A speech meet here as well, and the West Region baseball tournament will be held at Jack Brown Stadium, just to name a few of the tournaments that we're going to be hosting once again. And I think we've done a very good job in our community of hosting these tournaments, and that's why annually we're able to come back and be able to host those. As proud as I am of all of our teams and those things that we've done, what I want to share with you next is what I'm most proud about. And I did share late this afternoon with Dr. Leck, and I don't know if he had the chance to share with you or not, but North Dakota High School Activities Association has a Team Scholar Award that they present annually, or that you can qualify for at the end of each season. We've got 23 varsity sports at Jamestown High School that are sanctioned by North Dakota High School Activities Association. This past year, well, previous year, we were a perfect 22 out of 22 because girls wrestling wasn't a varsity sport yet. This year, out of 23, we had 21, which I think is pretty impressive. We didn't get that perfect score, but you know, the teams that did miss, one team was a 3.105 team GPA, and another one was 3.179. In order to qualify, you have to have a team GPA at 3.2, and you can't round up, so you have to hit it on the nose. So, taking a look at that, what I'm most proud of is our students and our coaches getting it done in the classroom. Our collective fall sports GPA was 3.618 for all the teams. The winter's GPA was 3.474 collectively. The spring, collectively, 3.624. Okay, and if you take all those and average them out, our overall Team Scholar Award GPA, 3.572 across the board for the season, for the entire year. Okay, so why am I bringing that up? Obviously, I want to toot our horn a little bit. I think our students get it done academically as well as on the field, on the court, on the playing surface, and so on. But when people ask, why do we invest taxpayer dollars into activities? Why are we investing money, taxpayer dollars, into facilities? This is our why. We've got students that are connecting to school and performing in the classroom on a regular basis. This is our why. This is why we invest in our students, not only academically, but outside academics, because it's an integral part of what we do. Okay? We're about the whole student. It's fine arts. It's academics. It's sports. Okay? There's something at JPS for every single student if they want to get involved. And I'm going to share with you, we've got some more things that are on the horizon that hopefully we want to be taking a look at. One of them that we haven't touched on because flat out we haven't had an advisor readily available for us, or somebody that's been able to, that has that expertise ready to take the lead and go with it, is esports. Okay? And once we find that, we are also going to need some financial commitment as well, because you know, in talking with some other districts and so on that have implemented this, you could be looking at you know, a ballpark figure of anywhere from 25 to 30,000 to implement that. Okay, so I want to get that on your plates here a little bit, get you thinking about that, because down the road, I think this is something we need. That is an area of students, or a group of students right now that probably currently are not being served in any way, shape, or form. Okay, but if we can do that and touch these students, we can help more students achieve these GPAs. Help them connect to the school, help them become better students. Facility-wise, I just want to share some things with you on that end. You know, Charlotte and Gordon Hanson Stadium, what a great facility that's been. You know, we had a great experience this past fall for football. You know, track and field this spring, we had some challenges, you know, with the facility itself, with weather. Along with a new facility, we purchased some new technology to get going, and we had some rough spots there, but it's coming around. But just a new timing system that we use so that we can hopefully in the future, again, talking economic development, be bringing in more teams, bigger meets, and so on, so we don't have to travel, and we're bringing people into our community. There are some issues with the construction site right now that they're figuring out and trying to work through. So, you know, there's some settling, I think, that's happened within some of the concrete work and so on, and as well as some bubbling on the track just because of, you know, I would say just because of water and some of that. So they're figuring some of those things out, and hopefully, you know, they'll have answers to those sooner than later. The Erstead Field, as part of that project, has been a great addition. You know, our spring teams utilized this heavily this past spring because of all the rain and everything else that we've had. There's some needs we still have there. You know, I'd like to see us be able to take the lights from Gates Field And if we can transfer them up there, I'd like to see a set of bleachers maybe from Gates Field. Maybe we can repurpose those. Those are some things I think that are probably big ticket items, that something down the road that we could be looking at. You know, I did visit with, I had somebody approach me about purchasing a scoreboard, excuse me, for that facility, and unfortunately that fell through. They chose to go a different route and so on. But I do know that at some point in time we're going to need to put something like that on there. And depending on what we choose to do going forward with that facility can determine the size of that scoreboard and how large we go with that. Now, as I said, we probably we used the Erstead field quite a bit for practice purposes. With our soccer field, Rotary Field, just being underwater most of the spring. In fact, we only had one JV game on that facility all year. The rest of it, there was standing water. We ended up moving all of our other contests over to the UJ turf field, and we're very thankful to the University of Jamestown for allowing us to do that. We could have done it on Erstead Field, with the exception of, obviously, that being a new facility. It was pretty muddy around the outside of that. The grass that had been seeded in the fall hadn't quite taken yet, and so on, so that would have been a mess. So that's one of the reasons why we did that, as well as, obviously, as I said, lack of lights and some amenities out there too. But some things we'd like to do with that also, in the corner of that facility is a softball field. We'd like to be able to try to help finish that to the point where that will allow us for competitive games, varsity or sub-varsity games out of that corner if need be. Rotary soccer field, as I mentioned, it was overly wet all spring. We were thankful to utilize the UJ turf, but that's something also that if we're going to continue to use that facility, you know, we've done a lot with that, and it's come a long way from its inception of basically being a native soil, native grass field that started with nothing. For very few dollars, we've done a pretty good job of bringing that facility along. There's still some need of restrooms and, you know, even potential dressing rooms and concession, more of a permanent concession type thing out there too. So that's something on the horizon down the road we'd also like to take a look at and make sure that we get done. This past year, obviously, we all have challenges. Transportation was a huge challenge for us, especially in the winter months and the spring. And, you know, for various reasons and lack of available drivers made this extremely difficult for the bus companies that we work with. And because of lack of other options, we were very limited in what we could do. So I know that you guys are in the process or have approved of moving forward with some additional transportation. And I want to thank you for that, because that will definitely help us going forward. It probably is not going to solve every issue, but it's going to be very well received. And I know in some of our activities, especially in the spring, some of our smaller groups too, can definitely utilize those nonstop. So we appreciate that, and that I think is a very good move. Our participation numbers overall continue to be healthy. Students are getting involved. For whatever reason right now, one program, and I hate to single a sport out, but I'm going to in this situation, but our girls basketball right now, and it's not just exclusive to Jamestown. Girls basketball as a whole across the state is really struggling with participation numbers, and we're following along with that. So for whatever those reasons are, and there's probably a variety of them, that's something we need to continue to work towards and try to manage and take a look at going forward. So something that we might have to, whether it's how we're programming or how we're doing, dividing up our teams and so on, might be something we need to take a look at in the future. As I said before, additional programming going forward, esports is going to be a huge, huge one that we know that's been out there that we need to seriously consider. Another program that I would like for this group to take a look at and consider is our softball program. Right now, softball for us is a 7 through 12 sport, and I think to put us on the same level as boys have with baseball, and our current numbers justify it. I think it's time to split into a middle school program for 7th and 8th grade, so that 7th and 8th grade softball has their own season and programming as well. because as I said, I do believe that those numbers justify that. You know, obviously, we know costs with everything are going up. We appreciate everything that you do for the activities department and athletics and our fine arts. You know, as I said before, we're able to do here at Jamestown Public Schools that a lot bigger schools have to offer, and we're able to do it as well. And I think we do a pretty good job of utilizing our dollars and I don't want to say getting by, but being able to offer these programs, otherwise we wouldn't be able to. Our programs do a good job, I think, of being fairly thrifty and good with their dollars too, and our coaches understanding what their limitations are. And they do a lot of fundraising on their own too, but I don't think it's overly excessive to the point where we are a constant burden on the community. I think there's a lot of other programs that are probably doing more so than what these groups are. So I thank everybody for the support that we've had. It's been a good year. The students are back at it, working hard in the off season right now and getting ready for 22-23. And I know our coaches are too, and our advisors, because I keep getting texts and phone calls from them here this summer wanting to get going. So with that, thank you, and I'll entertain any questions that you guys might have.
The board have any questions? Dan?
Thank you for mentioning the participation rate, and I love how you mentioned the importance of having academics and activities put together. Do you have, what was our participation rate overall?
That I don't have.
Okay.
You know, it's real easy for me to do the GPAs because we have that paperwork right there that we do. You know, our participation rate, that's a good question. That's something that I probably should be doing. I would venture to say that we're probably around that 40%. I think we can do better, but I think overall what we see is the students that participate in multiple. And that's one thing too that I'm really proud of at Jamestown is that we don't have, you know, there is some specialization, but we're not going to survive in any of these sports and activities if students just specialize.
Jason?
My question also was that, so you said 40% involvement in an activity or?
In an activity.
Okay. Are we doing anything either through the counseling department or anything to identify more students who may want to get involved? Is that part of any kind of freshman orientation?
Yes.
Are we just trying to, are we doing anything to get that percentage up?
Yeah. Annually, when we bring the 8th graders up from Jamestown Middle School and they have their orientation up at Jamestown High School, we allow the activities and the sports teams and the organizations to set up a table or a booth so that when they come in, they're recruiting. They're letting the students know that, hey, these are the activities that are out there for you. Come on out. We do have some of our students actually will come down to the middle school during lunch hours too and spend some time and talk to some of the students and visit with them about their experiences and some of the programming that they've had and so on. So there is some of that going on. Can we do better? Yeah, I think we can.
Any other questions for Mr. Olson? Mr. Olson, maybe get that participation rate when
Yeah.
you figure and get to Dr. Leckney. He can just
Yep.
send that out
You
since
bet.
there was questions on that. Appreciate that.
Not a problem.
I appreciate the report and very successful spring and athletics and activities. So I appreciate you letting us know that, as well as it's nice to see that high school swimming pool being used for girls swim and dive state. So that's great. So
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming.
You bet.
Moving on in our agenda, C, number 2, food services report.
That is just a written report as we transition between food service directors. We won't have an oral report this year, but have the written report, and Sally and I can answer any questions if there are any for the food service report.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, very good. And if you have questions, just let Dr. Leck or Sally know. Moving on to teacher shortage seminar report. Jason, you attended this seminar. Would you let us know how that went?
Okay, so I don't need to be too long-winded here, but as a reminder, I think all of us got an email from school board associations about this summit, and this is the kind of stuff I like, so I went. And it was a group of about 100 stakeholders from teachers, admin, legislatures, a handful of school board members, DPI, university system, North Dakota United. So it was a good representation of all those involved in the issues. So, to be brief, we started the day with just some current statistics about shortages, where they're occurring, why, some of the whys, and some of those demographics. The interesting part of that was the folks who are tracking some of this at the state level are really they're on the cusp of getting some raw data on how COVID has truly, impacted our teacher situation and administrators and whatnot too, because we're short all around. Then the next stage, we reviewed some current options for licensing. Basically, it was a presentation on what is available out there. Dr. Leck is well versed in that, so it was just kind of a summary of all the options for shortage areas for the upcoming school year. Then we went into some very, very productive table talks, and they had us split up and assigned to certain tables. And so we discussed as a larger group, just the overall picture that we're seeing. And of course, the purpose of all this, we've all been to those seminars where the purpose is you all talk in smaller groups and then you all come up with a lot of the same idea or the same issues and that sort of thing. So when it was all said and done, the tables kind of all agreed that we were facing 5 major buckets or major issues. And I call them buckets because that's what we're going to have to start putting, some of our resources into. But the 5 buckets were, and I don't need to go into detail on these, but licensure, what are some options there? Teacher prep and innovative practices. Financial support at all levels, federal, state, local. That's going to be huge. Educator retention and recruitment. And then just overall, what can we do to elevate the profession once again? Why are we seeing a decreased number of young people entering the profession? What can we do to, maybe earn some of that back? And I'm not saying we deserve to lose it, but there are some issues facing public ed in that regard as far as, just elevating the teaching profession. So to summarize, it was a great day, and what I liked about this is it wasn't a one and done. It's definitely a group that is going to continue to do some work. The other interesting, so a few of my takeaways were, and we all know this, but there are things within our control and there are things beyond our control, and we just need to remain focused on what we can control in the here and now. Another takeaway that I think is we need to remember is that by no means are we, Jamestown, North Dakota, facing any of this alone. The interesting thing there was we heard from some folks from Kansas, and in Kansas and Tennessee, they've started a Grow Your Own Apprenticeship program, which is an incredibly in-depth, extensive internship type thing. I'm going to do some more research on that. But it's really worked well in those states. But the point of that is, of course, this is a nationwide concern, and we're not facing anything specifically here that other parts of the country aren't. One of the biggest things I think that North Dakota has on its side is we are still a state, as most are, but we are still a state that deeply cares about the education of our kids. And I mean, we're a state that we will do what needs to get done to make sure that our kids are taken care of educationally. So first of all, I think that's great that we still have we still have very, very connected stakeholders. And, a lot of that has to do with our culture, smaller district sizes, they want to maintain, they want to maintain their presence. Obviously, that's huge to those smaller communities. So we have a lot of people who are willing to work hard to focus on some of these issues. I think my gut is, and DPI, Heather went to a meeting, my wife went to a meeting like a week after this with DPI, one of the superintendent's cabinets or another group, and she came back and it was basically the same issues. So there's some relatively large stakeholders out there that are identifying the same issues. So if we can, harness all of those, we can probably make something happen. But the point of that was DPI, there is going to be a major, major push legislatively for some funding this biennium, which has to occur. Otherwise, things aren't going to get any better, obviously. So yeah, so it was a great day, and if anyone is interested in this group or participating in this, what they did then was they sent out a survey of which of these 5 areas would you be willing to like attend a more specialized, be part of a more specialized task force. I'm sure they would welcome anybody who's interested in either licensure, teacher prep, financial support, education, retention, and elevating the profession. Just let me know and I can figure out if anyone would be willing to serve on one of those. I planned to work on either education retention or elevating the profession, so I'm looking forward to more meetings. Any questions? Kind of a general, not rocket science, but it's good. It was good to see that many people in one room discussing it.
The board have any questions for Jason? Okay. Yeah, thank you for attending, Jason, and sharing the information with us. We do appreciate that. Number 4, unofficial election results. Is that Sally? Okay, thank you.
You have the written report in front of you, the unofficial results of the school board election held on June 14th. As most of you are aware, the county, we have a joint powers agreement with the county, so they conduct the election. And so the official results, the meeting is scheduled for the canvassing board of Stutzman County on June 27th. But unofficially, Heidi Larson, Jason Rohr, and Dan Tweeten have been reelected, and Melissa Gleason. And for the second rural spot, Steve Belkamp had a write-in of 29 write-in votes. So those are your school board candidates coming up to be seated July. Congratulations.
Thank you, Sally. Any questions? Okay. Moving on, board education. Educational competency curriculum selection process. Mrs. Thompson and Mr. Haglund and Mr. Mickelson. Thank you. I thought maybe there was one more there. Yes, thank you.
Oh, geez. They're probably gonna need.
Okay, well, thank you for giving us a chance to talk about the process we use for working through curriculum, selecting resources for curriculum. It's always nice to talk about processes and help you guys understand what is all involved in that. First of all, when we talk about developing curriculum, our curriculum is our state standards. It's based on our state standards. Curriculum is not a textbook. The textbook is a resource, so it's sort of 2 different pieces. Our curriculum is developed through looking at our standards. A lot of the work that teachers are doing right now is going through prioritizing standards. What are those that raise to the top that need to be made sure that are infused into our teaching? And then the next part is, what are the resources that you use to make sure that those are being delivered in the best method and received by the students in the best method. So the way that begins is that teams decide what resources, what curriculum area needs a resource at that point. A team usually gets together. That team can be at the elementary level. It can be typically we would do multiple grade levels for like a math curriculum or science curriculum, bringing representatives from each grade level together to go through that. Sometimes that's a specific grade level. It might just be one grade level that's looking at materials for that to meet standards at that particular grade level. At the high school, middle school, typically those are grade level teams or department teams based on what what area it is. So there can be a lot of different configurations to that selection process or that recommendation process. But typically, they start off by looking at, what is it that they need help with? What is it that they need resources for? And they will look at, they'll review what's available. Oftentimes that happens by talking to colleagues across the state, other professional organizations, looking at research, reviewing literature, and deciding, these are some things, some materials we should look at, some resources. We should look at getting samples of those. Oftentimes that involves contacting vendors. Sometimes, depending on the magnitude of that purchase or that materials that are being looked at, the resource, it might involve having a demonstration of what, from a sales representative from the company, about what additional materials are available in addition to if it's just a text or if it's other resources. And they get they look at the materials, ask for narrow that down to the one that they would, the one that they select, ask for a quote or a proposal from the company or from the vendor for those materials. And typically again, at different levels, principals sign off on that. That recommendation comes to me, that proposal will come to me. If I've been involved in the process all along, then I add that to my recommendations for budget proposals. If I haven't been involved in that process, then I will follow up with that grade level or that content area and get some more information that we need from all areas and from a different perspectives, including tech resources that are needed and things like that. And then I put that proposal, those resources, in a proposal in the form of a budget proposal that I present for approval to the board. So that's overall in the process that is used. I asked Caroline Thompson to talk a little bit more specifically about the high school process. And then Cody Mickelson is here as a teacher, how those resources are used in the classroom. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Caroline.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you. This past year I served as the AP coordinator at the high school. I have a rich past of history with the AP College Board and think very, very highly of their program and have been pleased that you all have thought to approve our courses that we've suggested to teach through the College Board. We believe this is a fantastic step based on our data and the input from our department chairs that we have. And so we were thrilled to propose the U.S. history. I would like to walk you through a little bit about that textbook selection process, sort of as a metaphor for what is the high school very rich process of textbook review. I sort of codified my thinking into 6 steps. I'm a process analysis type of person. So step number 1 is that proposal based on the data and gathering that input from the departments that this would be a course that would really complement the course offerings at JHS, and we chose the U.S. history. Step number 2, then, after everyone meets, the administrators get together and talk with department chairs and the department members. The department member that would teach that course begins to review the College Board requirements. The College Board lays out very strident scope, particularly, and rigor demands with their courses. They do not assign a particular curriculum, you might say. They demand rigor and they demand a scope of study. They put that into what they call knowledge skills and thinking skills, that they have the thinking skills spiral throughout that course, and the teacher then after that investigation agrees I can offer this rigor and scope, they have to sign an acknowledgement for the College Board that they understand the depth of material that will be required of them to teach to the students, and then that comes to the AP coordinator. The AP coordinator acknowledges that this is the rigor and scope that we intend to provide to our students, and then I send that statement off to the College Board. The College Board then reviews that, and then the instructor can move to submit their syllabus. So the instructor will, step 3, begin to delve into what they would like to design as their course scope and sequence, their particular curriculum, and really get into the nitty-gritty of what will be the best learning constructs to convey this material for JHS students to meet that successful college course requirement that we feel is such an advantage for our students to experience before they engage in a big university setting, to have that mentorship almost from a high school teacher, providing that depth of curriculum and yet that support at the same time that you don't find on college campuses due to the nature, just the construct of a college schedule, I believe. So they will then start that textbook review. They've thought about their curriculum. They've thought about what a syllabus might look like for them. And the textbook review begins usually by reviewing. There are many collaborative AP teacher communities that will talk about textbooks that are have been very advantageous in their course of studies. And then the AP College Board also puts out a list of already approved recommended textbooks. So what this would mean is when a textbook, so the College Board does require that your selection be a college level textbook. So this means you look to publishers that have very strident editorial review boards, university presses, this type of thing. A textbook that is very highly scholarly reviewed, peer edited for correctness, for accuracy, all of these types of things. They will work with very advanced rubrics, very advanced approval processes in these UP, University Press situations. From there, they will publish, their textbooks. Then the College Board has their own group of reviewing professors that will review those textbooks that are then published by the university presses for this particular subject. And they will go on to say, we have reviewed this listing of textbooks. It's just a suggestion. We are not demanding that you use these textbooks. We do require a textbook as a primary. If you're going to offer this course, you must submit to us your primary resource that you will be using. So the textbook purchase and commitment by you all, the district and the board and the school must happen. And but then the teacher will look at this list of recommendations that have been reviewed by the College Board's group of scholarly peers, and they will oftentimes, like Mr. Hecklin said, ask for copies, meet with the reps, discuss with the reps. Once they have done their rubrics and their review, the teacher review, they will go to their department chair. Fortunately, at JHS, our department chair has many, many years of AP experience, and he will review the textbook. The department will review the textbook, and then we will bring it to the admin, the administrators, and they will say, all right, we'll bring it to you all and the board of approval. Then once that's done, we will send that textbook that we've decided for that primary resource. He also has to send in his supplementary resources to the College Board, and they will approve or disapprove of that resource material, reject or accept his syllabus, and so then that's the process. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cody Mickelson. I'm the German teacher at Jamestown High School and teaching U.S. government this summer. They didn't leave me a whole lot to say, so it's kind of nice they did all the work for me, so I'm just going to come in and clean up a little bit. I guess one of the things I wanted to just mention is we used to have a paper process for this, and a lot of this has just turned over into a technological process because textbooks are becoming online resources, and those are connecting to a lot of auxiliary resources that we see. But just to back up to when we had a paper process for adopting text, it was really helpful for me at one point in the early stages of my career to be permitted to go to New Jersey and work with ETS to write the teacher licensure exam. And what that really does is it helps you step back and out of the resources that are immediately in front of you and ask the question, what do we want our teachers to know to be able to teach? And I always think about that particular experience, because sitting in a room with a bunch of different, in my case it was German teachers, but I imagine any of the practitioners in a specific area, gives you an opportunity to talk about what really is the fundamental knowledge that we want our students to have, and it gives you a chance to see if you're on the same page as some of your peers. And Jamestown, we only have one foreign language teacher per content area, so it's a little unfortunate in terms of that in-person everyday collaboration, but that isn't to say is that we don't seek it out and look for those specific standards we want to meet. So we have North Dakota standards. The textbooks that we select are thankfully have all that spelled out in them. So national standards are printed right into the activities that we, in my particular content area anyway, choose to use. But those resources aren't the only ones that we use either. And so we always look to our state standards when we pick something. And I just wanted to place you in, if you've ever taken a foreign language, and my hope is that you wouldn't have just had a textbook and have just done everything out of the book and that was your only experience. Just like if you're taking a math class or an English class, the only time that you do math or read isn't from a textbook, you're going to find another source or a resource that can help augment and make some of that relevant to the students in your class. And so, there are a number of units that I always find really challenging to teach, and the first one that comes to mind is about fashion, because by the time you print something with fashion in a textbook, it's not in fashion anymore. So the obligation that I have as an instructor is to teach the principles of what that is, but to augment that with some reality and in relevant context for our students. And I think you can apply that analogy to just about any content area. And I view myself as one of my jobs. I was just, before I got here today, reading the Teacher Code of Ethics, because this conversation stems from something I think professionally every teacher has an obligation to teach their students accurate, relevant, and contextual information. And one of the things that brought to mind was all of those things that we choose in our classroom, I'm the filter of what goes to my students. So if there's something that I don't feel is appropriate, whether it's in a textbook, whether it is in a resource, I'm the one that delivers it to the students in the room. And I ultimately have to take responsible for what I deliver to them, but that's the professionalism that I chose to take when I took the job, and it's also the part of the professional training that I received. And so I think there are a lot of avenues for resources beyond the text. I know Ms. Thompson talked about the AP level coursework that is pretty rigorous. We have dual credit classes, which also work in conjunction with our public university system, and they have a pretty rigorous text. But that's not to say is that our other content areas aren't preparing students to enter college-level courses. So just because we aren't necessarily teaching a college-level course or a dual credit course at the high school level doesn't mean we're not creating that entry standard for them should they choose to go on. So I hope that's enough to at least be equal to what they said, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take it.
Gail, go ahead.
I would just like you to clarify, is it North Dakota teachers who are writing North Dakota standards? And how many of our local teachers have been a part of that process? We don't have to have exact amounts, but
Right.
I know they have been.
Right, yes. When Department of Public Education, Public Instruction does their standards update, they put out a message through a lot of different sources asking for teachers to help with that process and standard development and standard review. So it's always North Dakota. We've had different teachers at different levels. Not too many years ago, just in the last couple of years, we had some teachers on that for the ELA and the math at the elementary level. They're doing a review right now. We have some social studies people. I know that we have a couple. You apply for that process. So we've had teachers in the past that have been involved in that. Exact numbers, I can't tell you that, but we are, we try to encourage teachers to do that. Yep.
I don't know the number. I know math is coming up and some other things. But I would say if you get a chance to go to the Department of Public Instruction website, all of the standards are listed and they are all dated as their last revision. And if you click on those, there's a common format with title page. I would encourage you to go and look and see how many specifically Jamestown educators have been involved, because they list the names and where those individuals work. And having been part of that myself, it's a great experience. It's a lot of work. And it's totally worth it, but I would encourage all of you to just take a look at the names that are attached to some of those standards.
Thank you, Cody. Dan, go
Thanks for the explanation. That really helped me understand the process a lot better, being relatively new to this process. I do understand about the level of the standards being, that's what drives you. And that was a great first statement to make. And then Cody, when you mentioned that the teachers are really filtering what that content is, how do you handle, texts are going to be a range of topics that might be controversial. The parents aren't going to read standards, and they're not going to be there in the classroom. If they see resources that may not fit well with the community standards or how we want to see things, how is that process kind of handled? Is that at the teacher level? Is that part of your discussion when you look at the curriculum and the resources? Any controversial type issues that might be in the resource, but maybe isn't necessarily in the standard?
I would say typically that comes up through the building, through a building level, with a parent raising a concern with a teacher going to the principal and saying, hey, this is the issue, and depending on the depth or the extent of that, it might go all the way to the superintendent getting involved in that discussion. But typically there's a form that we have that's a challenge of textbook or challenge of materials that are used in the district and stuff like that. So I don't know if Dr. Leck has any more to add to that.
I could actually. I was thinking about this issue, and I know it's maybe hard to believe with all the wrinkles and the receding hairline, but I was a classroom teacher at one point, and I taught world history and geography along with English language arts. But working in North Dakota, we are not a very diverse place. We aren't now, and we weren't 25 years ago when I was teaching in the classroom. But when I was teaching, when you teach world history and geography, you are oftentimes the introduction to many cultures and many viewpoints in the classroom to sometimes very young kids. For me, I taught at the middle level and I taught in high school. In these two courses, in my experiences, coincided with 9/11. So just put yourself in those shoes of teaching about the Middle East and the Islamic faith in a very polarizing time in our history. In that snapshot of time, it wasn't easy, and I think it's a good kind of a microcosm to, my example is kind of a good microcosm to, I think, in general, what happens in polarizing situations. And to your point and to your question, it's not easy, but you have to take extreme care to honor all perspectives and focus on facts. That's what our teachers are required to do, and that's not a new thing. That's not a 2022 issue. I imagine teaching in 1968 was pretty challenging when you're in the middle, the initial stages of the Vietnam War, and you have Civil Rights Act, and you have political unrest across the board. That had to have been a very challenging time to teach social studies then, too. That common denominator is the teacher of where that filter comes. But for me, and I can only speak for me, but even as a young teacher, I wanted to make sure that all my students walked out of the classroom having an understanding to all sides of the issue, but had no idea where I stood on the issue. Because that's not, the point isn't to push people to one side, it is simply to share all of it. And I think our teachers do that across the board because they're great teachers. They do that because they want to represent all of the sides, and that is a primary focus when you're in the classroom. And we're talking more about social studies now, but that's the same in any content area. From art to mathematics, you're going to have the same perspective. You want to make sure that your students hear all perspectives, and you're focused on facts. And when I say facts, just you can look at that and say standards. I want to make sure that I'm not infusing my own beliefs into something. It is standards-based. And so you kind of walk that line, I guess, maybe in my long, winding way to get to the answer to your question. You have to honor all the perspectives. You have to answer questions that kids ask, and they're going to have very relevant, time-sensitive questions, and you have to provide all of the perspectives. And like I said, I think what our teachers do is they, most of our students are going to walk out of the classroom and say, I heard side A and I heard side B, but I have no idea where Mr. Mickelson really believes. And that's what our teachers do. So I hope that answered your question, my long, winding way.
Can I try and take a stab at that too? to address your question specifically, I think your question, if I remember from that, when you asked it, was, do we make the decision for curriculum selection or resource selection individually, or do we go to a group, or kind of, is that what you were?
It's kind of a team effort.
Yeah.
And there's going to be variations each.
Yeah, and
school
then,
is gonna have different directions.
then you spoke to the community taste or tolerance for the issue. And so, you know, we PLC every Wednesday at our high school, and a lot of those conversations turn into standards conversations. And a lot of that is what particular resource we would use. And those are good conversations to not only run that by your department members, but just colleagues in general. Like, hey, what do you think about me using a resource like this? Do you think that would hit the nail on the head? Or is that going to be something that creates more of a distraction from my greater point? And it isn't to say is that some of those resources aren't going to drive a conversation, but the last conversation that I want to have about something that I taught is with any of you. Not because I don't want to talk about what I've done in my classroom, but because I know if you call me about what I've taught, it's probably going to be because it was something that maybe I was pushing too far on. And it's not to say, again, that students can't handle some of those issues, but if you ever get a chance to spend a day in a high school classroom, there is no shortage of perspective brought to the room. And so sometimes it's just moderating a conversation in a thoughtful way and then making sure that our teaching isn't getting into any one specific trench of what is being already brought to our classroom. So I always like to think that the students are the most relevant part of the class because, you know, what we're teaching has to be written before the bell rings, and by that time it's probably outdated in some cases. But I hope that kind of lands a little bit.
Any follow-up, Dan? Go ahead.
I guess the biggest part of my question was the overall process, because per our procedures and our policies, it's the board who's responsible for that, and we delegate a lot of that responsibility to qualified teachers. And the amount of work that you have in front of you that's a lot of steps in the process. I think we have in our policy also a curriculum committee. How does that discussion kind of make it to the board so that when we're voting on that curriculum, it can be a trust but verify, because ultimately we're going to be accountable for it. And if we want people to trust the full process, is there any level of oversight that the board can say, you know what, we understand where you're going at. The textbook might not be perfect, but we trust you and we know we've heard about it. You've got this under control, and we can approve that resource. That's kind of my general other question, is that level of board accountability that we're asked to take on.
Okay, so we do have a curriculum review committee that we have a board member on. That committee was just started a couple of years ago, and we have not met much at all, if at all. At the same time, our professional development committee was established and stuff, and then we had this little thing called COVID that sort of threw a wrench into things. So that is something that we have to do a better job of. That's something I have to do a better job of. That's my responsibility, is to bring those people together and share that information. And like I said, a member of the board is on that committee. So that's something I have to do better on.
Jason?
Yes, thanks to all three of you for presenting, and maybe just another perspective. I think Mr. Mickelson hit it perfectly when he said, you know, our students, we're not introducing anything to our students that they're not aware of. Social media, you know. So, and I appreciated when the thought process was we're facilitating discussions as professionals to make sure that our children, our students are getting both sides with clarity and with I think that's a huge piece of this, because this is nothing new to education. You know, parents, the whole reproductive biology of dissecting a frog may have offended, you know, a parent or two kind of thing. So I think if we focus on our professionals and the job they do, understanding that they are leading our students through some, you know, history may see this as a very interesting time in our country. So I appreciate that. My only question would be, The social studies, we're approving 6th through 9th grade textbooks, correct? Based on this list, or is AP textbooks on there?
Yes, AP is on there. AP is a high school test.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, ninth grade,
That's, okay, that's why I was confused, so,
yeah.
okay. Okay, thanks.
Melissa?
I do appreciate you guys coming in and letting us know how you go about taking care of figuring out which books are coming in, and it gives me a little bit more of an understanding. One of my concerns with one of the books in particular, I did go through and I was reading, didn't read word for word, got to be honest with you. I'm skimming through some of the social studies stuff, and to me, it read more like an editorial as opposed to fact. And I just was a little concerned. It seemed to be more bias. And I understand that, yes, there are different perspectives and different people have different experiences, and I have no problem with that, and people need to be introduced to different things. But I guess having that as the textbook, it just seemed like it really tweaked one way or another, and I'm got to be trusting that the teacher then is going to be kind of balancing out that textbook, and I feel that teachers can do that, but it just concerned me a little bit if I, as a parent, was reading and helping my child study this book, how that's going to come across. Because I got to be honest, there's a couple of things I was just like, whoa, that just seems really, a lot of adjectives and and I didn't see a lot of like fact type stuff. It just, like I said, it just seemed to read more dramatic and like an editorial, and that is what kind of concerned me a bit.
And like we said earlier, I think that's where you get the process where if a parent does have concern, they need to go to that classroom teacher and ask about it and talk about it and find out what's going on. And that's again another process. So, but yeah, I think I think you hit it on the head when you talked about that you need to trust the people that are making those decisions, and they're not making them in isolation. They're working as a team. They're professionals. We need to go through and do our due diligence, but at the same time, they do the work, and that's what we have them for. Okay, thank you.
Are there more questions from the board? Okay. And Mr. Hagelin, what we were looking at, what I looked at was there was like some textbook material, then there just was some other like additional resources, right? So it was kind of a combination of things.
Right.
Yep.
Most of it is textbook.
Okay.
It's getting. Sally and I have this discussion all the time. It used to be that you bought a textbook. Now you buy a resource, because many publishers have, in addition to a textbook, they have online resources and everything else. Sometimes we're buying a license for an online material that's taking the place of a textbook. So it's teacher resources and textbooks. It's gotten muddy in terms of defining. You just don't pick up a textbook and say this is the textbook we're using all the time. It's a little bit more complicated than that. That's why it's sort of trying to keep it as close to that textbook.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you for reminding me of that one, because that's the other question I had was, because things are going more online, how do you keep ahead of that? And then also, very software-intensive resources that are built in, basically, it's coded. You can't really read it. How do you assess that kind of material when it's very dynamic, it's very based on what the user answers are, infinite number of possibilities how it could be read? How is that handled in the context of a classroom?
I think most, that comes across mostly from, our larger publishers that have resources that go beyond the textbook. So we have, example, some of our assessment software, excuse me, our assessment software is that type of material that does some leveling of students or deciding what individual needs are and stuff. And that, again, is, we rely on research based upon the publishers and their validity. Again, many of those things are conversations we have across the state with other school districts. What are you using for this? What has been good? What have you seen that's giving you good results? Anywhere from the national, from the state level, particularly, but even at the national level and stuff. And to be honest, some of those things really have to be well designed and well presented and well structured in order to make it to our door. I mean, to make it to our screen or whatever you want to say, because they don't survive if they're not.
I can just add more from the pilots. I've been involved with several pilot process products now, supplementary resources with several departments, and they have a very actually strident, robust conversation that they have around, we have around these pilot programs. We're constantly dialoguing about anything, any problems we see, any aspect that would not be meeting the needs that we sought out for that program to meet. Any bias in language, we actually will review that. I mean, we are very vigilant. Any incorrectness in the programs, and we'll make notes, and then usually I'll go back and I'll communicate to that representative. We see this as a problem, and on several occasions they've actually changed several things in response to our demands, and so it is a very ongoing, lively evaluation that we conduct whenever we do introduce a new supplement or primary material.
Is that someone within the educational academic community that does that evaluation?
Yeah, my experience has been, yes, that it's been me working with my department teachers and department chairs to really look very, very closely at evaluating those.
Go ahead,
Might
Cody.
just
Yeah.
add to that you're right that online resources can be updated. That's the nice part about things being online, they can be updated, but nothing frustrates me more than when they update it without telling you. Because then there goes your lesson plan for the day or something like that. So I think that there are a lot of times publishers will notify you if they've made an update to something. And the other thing is publishing textbooks is a business, and so they don't always give that information away for free. They save that for the next edition. So I would say that there is usually not static information, but most of the changes they're making are probably in some of the assessment resources or the materials that supplement their primary resource. So those would be things that I would say get looked over on a basis as you're using them, or even ahead of time, whereas the primary information that you're teaching is not as likely to change. Not impossible, it will, but I mean, they'll usually notify you. So,
Dr. Lack, go ahead.
Maybe even a more simplistic way to look at responding to your question, Dan, is even back when I was teaching, a lot of textbooks, workbooks, maybe stone tablets or something. There were times when I didn't like the resources then either. And it might have been for a different reason. They might have been outdated. They might have been not a message I wanted to support, or a lesson I felt was meeting the standards of what I wanted to be teaching or I needed to be teaching, and I didn't teach those, or those were ones I didn't select. As classroom teachers, you have that autonomy to say, this doesn't teach to that standard or this priority standard. I need to spend more time here, and so I don't do that. Or, kind of what I was referencing before, our teachers are gatekeepers in our community, and they are grounded in the values of the community they live and work here. They hold the same values as everybody else. And so if they go and they say, I don't know if I like the wording on this, I'm not going to pick it. And our classroom teacher is going to make the same choice. They're going to say, well, to get to that, I'm going to teach to this standard, but I'm not going to use that resource. I'm going to use this one because this fits better. So I think we just have more choices as educators to be able to say, this fits, this doesn't. And it just goes down to allowing our teachers either individually or in PLCs and planning to say, this is a good resource. I don't like this one. I didn't like 5.2. I did this instead, or I used this open source material. Lots of information out there for teachers to make that selection from, to ensure that that it's grounded in the values in the community.
I guess the bottom line for me is that it is more than the resource.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's the whole system that works together. The resource is one bit of it. It might be the most visible point, but, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Excellent discussion. Thank you to the three of you. We appreciate you coming in the summer and to share with us. I very much appreciate it. Next, we're moving on to educational competency bid procedures. There you are. You have a presentation up there. Okay. Okay.
Figure out which one of these lights actually goes first here.
Oh, I always do that. Rob doesn't know how to do that. Is it going to pop up, Mike? Okay. Give us a minute. What I'm going to review with you is I have a short PowerPoint presentation that Rob linked to the agenda. And so I'm going to review the Century Code that talks about the bid process. I'll review an example bid process that we did, and then two other options that the district uses for purchasing. Once we get technology rolling here. Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Okay, so, like I said, we're going to review the law, the bid process, and then the state contract, Office of Management and Budget, and then the North Dakota Education Service Cooperative. That's what I would like to review with you. Okay, so I took a snippet right out of the Century Code. The Century Code that talks about the bidding process is in 15.1-09-34. And the first item, it says, except for the below items, amounts greater than 50,000 go out, the district is, or the school board is required to go out for sealed bids and has been published in a paper for 10 days. So that is law. A synopsis below is exceptions to that. Obviously, district employees, things that are unique and patented, and building construction projects are covered in another Century Code. Some other items is transportation services, and another item is those buses, those minibuses that you just approved since they're transporting kids. That's an exception to this bid law. And also building materials. There's some other things. Building materials when a student is building those cabins at CTC. And then obviously the other two topics that are in here is exceptions is the cooperative purchasing agreement at the state level and then the cooperating joint powers agreement. Those are the exceptions. So what I want to talk about is just to give you an example. Some of you were on the board, some of you were not. In 2017, we determined that we should, some of our furniture, a lot of our furniture was very, very, very old. Some of you were on the board at that time. And we decided that we should, it was going to a collaborative type environment and that we should purchase new classroom furniture. So we formed a committee, and the committee had teachers on it, administrators from all levels, and myself, and we met with several vendors, furniture vendors. They gave presentations to all of us on their furniture, and we met and determined that we should start, obviously, because the school district didn't have millions of dollars to do it all at once, we met and determined that we would start at the elementary level. So the elementary team met, elementary principal, elementary teachers, and myself met and determined this is the kind of furniture that we feel would work well for the students. So we met and determined that, and then we did a process with the furniture companies and said, okay, we needed to write bid specs to say, what is your guarantee? What is your, timeline? What are you going to just send the furniture? Or are we going to have to put it together? Is it going to be, put together? what services come with, and what are we actually getting. So all of those specs were put together, and then this bid that you see, and it's in your package, saying that, you know, fill this bid spec out, you know, answer all the questions. What's your guarantee? What's your furniture like? All of those questions had to be answered in that proposal. And we gave the date and time in here saying, okay, on August 13th, 2018, we're going to open all of these. And the committee is going to meet and determine, okay, all of those bid specs. So when we meet, the next slide and the next thing in your presentation is a sample of a tabulation. So the committee looks at, how was the proposal? Was it laid out easy? Could we understand it? Did it answer? And that's huge. We need to know, because that's what we have in front of us. We need to know, is it easy to read? Could we see, did they answer all the questions that we wanted answered? What's the guarantee, the delivery time? Do we have to put it together? All of that type of thing. And the technology, the committee met and they wanted this collaborative furniture, and they had kind of designed what they thought would be best for the students. Did it meet that? What was the service? Were we just going to get a box and say, here, put it together? And obviously, the cost. Obviously, that, you know, looking at taxpayer dollars, that we all obviously had to consider the cost of the product. The other thing that we scored was the vendor experience. Were they helpful? Would they, you know, service us and help us out? Or, again, was it just something that we were going to order and we were done with them? So we tabulated all of that. And after that, we brought it to the board, because the board ultimately makes that decision. And throughout all that process and the cost, Accent Furniture was given this furniture bid. But that was the process. So that is one example of a process of taking it out for bid, what we do, and we bring it to the board for approval. Okay? So that's that's basically the bid process. Now, there's two alternatives. In the law you saw, I talked about alternate ways is the state contract, the Office of Management and Budget. They go out and do that for a ton, and Amy has some handouts. They go out and do it for, you know, furniture, copies, office supplies, a ton of different things. They've done all the work of what I just described for the furniture for lots of different things. So since they have done that bidding process, the school district can go out, and I'll go to my next slide. This is just one small, tiny snippet. It happens to be copiers that the district can go out, click on that. That's the contract. They'll have the national contact, and that national person gives you to the local contact, and you can purchase that. Because they have done all the work and awarded the contracts to whatever it's for, whether it's for vehicles, whether it's for supplies, whatever it may be for, and there's a ton. And you can go out, like I said, you can take that handout and you can go out to that site and you can look at it, and there is millions of different things that you can view and view the contract, and it has the end dates. So this is just one small sample of many, many items that the district can choose to purchase straight off the Office of Management and Budget. The other option is through a joint powers agreement. The North Dakota Education Service Cooperative is a joint powers agreement, and Amy has a handout on that. And that's for school districts, government entities, cities, counties, and they have a board and diversified membership. They have done, the same thing as the state, only on a smaller scale. I'll give you an example. We have innovative office stores, right here. They have that vendor and different vendors, and again, lots of vendors. They have worked with this joint powers agreement to say, okay, we want to sell to the school district. So this company has gone through the bidding process. So if we can log onto their site, and order items. And I have just a snippet, some innovative school specialty Blick art materials, and there's a ton of other vendors. We go on there, our purchasing person logs on and says, okay, we need paper from Innovative, we need something from School Specialty, and we need something from Blick. We are ordering from that company, but we are doing it through this, so we have met the Office and Management or the Century Codes guidelines because it's part of a joint powers. They have done the work. So a vendor, if they want to, they go and apply. I want to be part of this process. They get in there and they are listed in there, and then we just order from this company, and we've met the Century Code requirements. So that's kind of it. The big thing is the proposals, because they are in writing, and that's what we are evaluating and approving and assessing and making sure that it meets what we need to do. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Sally. Under regular meeting E, superintendent's report. This is further down than usual.
Yeah, thank
The
you.
agenda.
Give me a break before we get started. You have my written report as typical. I'll just skim through some of these areas a little bit more than others, but kindergarten enrollment, I have the enrollment update. As be expected and has historically occurred, our Roosevelt numbers have doubled in a couple of weeks, which is good news, meaning it's still, enrollment is still really quite low comparative to other years, but at about 117, that's certainly better than what we were looking at before when we were in the 70s. So that's good news, and you can see how they're spread out throughout our elementary levels. As I've told you, we're going to hold firm on, a couple of schools until we normalize and catch up with the rest. So we have some class sizes in the 16, 17, and then all the way down to 11. But things are starting to normalize a little bit, so that's certainly good news. Later on in the agenda, you will have a recommendation on a parental leave policy. And I just wanted to touch base on that just a little bit, and I want to recognize that really what this parental leave does is maintains a continuation of what we've already done in terms of paternity leave, or what was called paternity leave, and what was adoption leave. That's the status quo. That's maintaining the same as what we've been providing for a number of years. Where we see a difference, and this is something that as a board and as a district, I think we should be excited about, and something that really making a really good step here, and that's providing 4 weeks of paid leave in what was called maternity leave. Before, that was only coming from sick leave. Now, in that 12 weeks of FMLA, you would have a third of that covered through a district level leave. So 20 of those days would not come from sick leave, and wouldn't be subject to unpaid time, which is what about a third of that time was unpaid leave. And so we're addressing 4 of those weeks for what was maternity leave, and now we're calling it birthing leave into that whole parental leave. But I want to just reiterate, I think this is something we should have great pride in that we're doing. There isn't a district in the state of North Dakota that is providing this level of parental leave. So I think that's something to celebrate. And then just to reinforce that we aren't talking about a change to adoption leave or paternity leave that exists in the same manner as it did before. It's just all lumped into one policy, and we're rescinding policies as we've done, and just for greater efficiency. Moving on, facility projects. As you can, if you have taken a drive around the middle school, you'll see some boards. We're looking like we're definitely doing some work. But at the middle level, what you see mostly right now is replacement of the windows. So because our windows don't arrive until July, they have to demo the windows so they're ready to go. We need to be able to start school when next semester comes around. So they have to do some prep work. So they're demoing, prepping windows, and then when windows come, they'll start installing, and that'll all happen faster. But as you drive around, it looks a little sketchy because we have, we have our plywood up, and it looks, people probably wonder what's happening at the middle school. But we're just prepping and getting ready for windows, and they're doing a great job. You'll see a ton of work that's happening in the demo. And if you were to be able to go into Gusner, you'll really see demo, because that's HVAC, and they are tearing out ceilings, and they're doing a ton of work there. I really couldn't be happier with the progress that's happening at the middle level. And at Gusner, they're really, the contractor's really getting it done. A lot of really great work, and it makes me feel comfortable that when the next semester comes, when school starts again after summer break, that we're going to be as close to being ready as we can. A couple things to be aware of in terms of the construction. The best construction, we always know that something is going to come up. There's plans that we didn't know about, or things that we didn't know about that we need to plan for. At Gusner, there's really two minor things. We have some updated water. We have to update some water valves. We don't have to, but when the plumbers are in there, it's not a big expense. It's a lot cheaper than bringing them in, 2 years from now when something fails or we have a different problem. So we want to do that. And then there's some duct work that wasn't documented in building plans that serves no purpose that we want to take out. Just to clear up that space in there. And that's really minor work happening at Gusner. A little larger issue at the middle school. We have those, what's the acronym? RVUs, they're the cooling units in the middle level. In about 25 of the classrooms, the clearance is not quite what they anticipated. So the difference between what they saw in the blueprints and what actually happened the majority of it is over in the Delta unit, or in the Delta wing. There isn't as much clearance in the ceilings, and so we had to look and get smaller units. They do the same work. They're pumping out the same BTUs, but the clearance is lower, and so they're more expensive. And so about 25 of those units are going to be about $700 more per unit, but they do the same work, and it'll come out of our contingency. It's unfortunate, but if there's a saving grace in there, we did recognize and contacted the supplier before the 10% restocking fee. So when you're talking those kind of numbers, that's a pretty significant change. So that's good news, but those are things that'll come up in the change order. Change orders. In consolidated construction, we meet with them every other week. I've included some minutes in there for what we've talked about at every level. So we meet with Gusner, meet with the middle school, we meet at high school. Well, we all meet together, but we have meetings separate for each of those. And lastly, I'm still working with Interstate Engineering regarding the parking issue at Lincoln and how we're going to develop that old transition house lot for parking. In terms of ESSER, you'll have a budget revision, but I did update that budget and pathways document so you can see how that's changed from when we did this in September. And if there's questions, I can certainly answer those. In terms of the Teacher Leadership Academy, I'm not going to provide updates on the TLA every single time we meet, but I am excited about this one, and I wanted to share it. I know there's been a topic of conversation around culture, climate, morale for staff, and that found its way into a pretty significant signature assignment. So signature assignment is kind of the culminating assignment in every semester. And as we've talked about before, what I love about the Teacher Leadership Academy, it provides that graduate level academic experience, but it brings it to the teacher level. So it's relevant to the work that you're doing. I've given this example before, but when you're studying curriculum development at the university level, you're talking theoretically what happens. When we do it in the TLA, it's actual. This is what we do in Jamestown. We tie it to the academic, which is important. You still have to have, graduate level rigor, but we're making it relevant because we're talking about what happens in our buildings and in our district. In this leadership, in this first couple semesters, we're embedding some leadership, and our focus of the signature assignment, culture and climate, and teacher morale, looking at the 6 primary threats to teacher morale. And we've asked through these signature assignments for our groups to go, we have an elementary group, a middle school group, and a high school group, and to conduct focus groups with at each of those levels, analyze research around morale, motivation, and they need to submit an 8 to 10 page paper, which isn't all that important really, but they're looking to analyze the threats and then create potential recommendations for how we can improve teacher morale based on those focus groups. In the second semester, then what we're tying that together. The second semester, they have to come back together, and this is where I think it gets really important. They have to get back together with these focus groups and co-design strategies. Now it's not just about what did I see in this focus group, or what did I hear from this focus group, or what did administrators see or think. It's about co-designing what those strategies are then. Okay, so if we see a threat is in this area, we're going to work with teachers and staff to design then a strategy that helps to support that. And it's not all just big stuff. Sometimes it's little things too. And so that's why this group is important. And I'm just excited about what the potential for these two signature assignments do. And you'll be invited as board members to the presentations in December about what did each of these groups find. And so that'll be something that I'll give you some more information on. But to me, this is what the TLA is all about. And it just so happened in this room, the middle school focus group was meeting, and I had a chance to talk to the four that are serving on that team for the middle school, and they were just so excited and engaged about what they heard. We really got good information. We were really excited. People were very thankful to have the opportunity to engage in this conversation, and they're looking forward to the co-designing that's going to come next semester. The van bids, you'll act on those later, but the recommendation is going to be to deny that bid. And with that, I think that's all I have. With that, I'd stand for questions. And I did link those signature assignments and then the context there, if you had a chance to look at those. I just get excited because I think it's what the TLA is about.
Questions for the board? Jason?
Yeah, nice work to those involved in the parental leave policy. That was a result of negotiations. Both wanted to address some leave issues. Will that be it then for that part of it, or will that be an ad hoc committee that continues to look at other leave issues, or no?
This was the predominant, if you remember, really was in what was called maternity leave, and now birthing parent leave. But that was really the crux. I think we're going to want to meet again as a group to just say, are there other areas that we need to discuss? I know that there's questions about the EEOC and how does maternity leave tie in with adoption leave and paternity leave, or what was adoption leave and paternity leave. Now it's just non-birthing parent leave. But I think we still need to have some conversations about, do we need to make any shifts there or in other policies in this policy. But for now, that is I think the big rock.
Follow up, Jason?
To the projects update, do you or the contractor see any major, I know it's hard to say, but are they giving any red flags about access to supplies or access to being able to be done within the time frame?
No, not right now. I don't think anything is happening that we weren't aware of now. One of the great things about working with Consolidated Construction, or really any construction manager, is they are on top of this far more than we could be if it was just Sally and I. And they are in constant communication with the vendors, and where are things at, what can we expect, and they have been very, very close to delivery dates and times. And I also think it helps to have these bi-weekly meetings.
Any other questions for Dr. Leck regarding the superintendent's report or items on it? Okay. I stopped into the Teacher Leadership Academy, and they look very engaging. It looked very engaging. It wasn't intentional. I was actually in the wrong room for another meeting, but I did stop in.
It really has been. And when we talked about our signature assignments, once we laid the foundation, they just wanted to get to work. We actually had to move some things to a different day because they were just so engaged in what they were doing, and we didn't want to bridle the horse. We wanted to let them go, and we could shift other things to different days. But they were really doing a great job.
Great work. We're excited. Diane.
I think there was another person as well, but we went to the presentations last year in December, and they're just wonderful. It's well worth your time to come to that in December.
Yes, thank you. The graduates did share their action research. Yeah, it was great. We appreciate our teachers. It's a lot of extra time that they're putting into this on top of their their workload, but we appreciate the dedication that they have for it. Moving on to under old business, number 1, approval of textbook purchases for 2022 to 2023. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail. Second by Diane. Any further discussion? Okay. There being no discussion, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. G, new business, nothing under activities, nothing under buildings and grounds, nothing under curriculum assessment instruction. Number 4, finance. A, approval to reject ban bid. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa? Second by Gail. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. B, approval of copier proposal and number 1, tabulation. Is there a motion? Should we do the motion? I'll do, yeah, motion. Is there a motion? Motion by Dan? A second? There's a motion and a second. Dr. Luck, would you provide some discussion on this?
Yep, so just to provide a background to the process, so Sally, Dan, Tweeten, representing the board, and I met to review 3 quotes for proposals for copier services. As Sally had provided a little bit of board education already, this did not meet the threshold for a bidding procedure, but we did feel it was important to have an open process to allow a number of different vendors to be considered. And so while we didn't need to, by bid law, go through the process that we did, we still felt it was important. This was a state contract, with the copiers. So we felt it was an important process that we wanted to go through. And when you go through, if you've never been through a procedure like this, you take great care with each of these proposals, and you want to make sure that you're analyzing them and ultimately assessing them the best that you can. And when we went through and comprehensively reviewed each of these proposals, and we felt that 2 of the vendors, Central Business and Marco, should be strongly considered. We have experience working with both. We have Central Business currently provides our copier agreement, and Marco has the print management services. We're familiar with both, and they both do really outstanding work. And so we felt very strongly as we worked through these proposals collectively, individually first, but then collectively, that both are outstanding vendors and would do a great job for us. Like Sally outlined already, we use a rubric that we look to use to comprehensively assess each of the vendors, and we think it's important that we review those criteria and how each of the vendors and the proposals support each of those categories. And they're the same categories that you saw up, and I'll review those individually in just a second. But in any process like this, and Sally did touch on this also, we're limited by the quality of the proposals. We can't assume what's included, assume what's not included. If we have questions, or if something comes to us and says, well, what about this? And there were a number of times in this process that we had to ask some questions. Well, what about this? Did you think about, or is this answered here somewhere, or is this answered somewhere else? And sometimes we need to call vendors and get clarifications and say, well, what did you mean by this? I didn't understand. But sometimes we don't know the questions to ask. Sometimes there's clarifying questions that we can ask. Sometimes we don't even know the questions, what to ask or what not to ask. We are limited. We can't ask about everything. We're limited by what the proposal's given to us. And so to a degree, we're limited there. I also think it's important to recognize that we engage in open dialogue to ensure that we aren't going into groupthink. Sally says something, so that's what I automatically think, or Dan says something, so I say, yeah, I agree with Dan. We go through these things individually first, and we assess each of the vendors, and then we open up and have a dialogue. Because how I read something might be different than Sally. And so I read it one way, and Sally shares something, or Dan shares something, or Dan does the math and says, well, I got to this number. Well, you got to that number. How did you get to that? Because I got to this. And then we get together collectively once we've individually assessed. So we're getting away from groupthink. It's a very fair, going through the process, it's very fair and it's very open. And I'll maybe ask Sally and Dan to touch on all these topics when I kind of lay a foundation or anything I've missed or want to clarify. But really, the two candidates, Marco and Central Business, were extremely close. And we've had experience with both. So we felt very good about those top two candidates. And so as I walk through what you can see in the tabulation, both Marco and Central Business received the same scores for following proposal requirements and for vendor experience. Like I said, we have experience with them both, so we felt like we could rate them very, very easily in those. Where we had differences in the analysis of those proposals, in three different areas: technology, service, and cost. So in technology, the Marco proposal was rated slightly higher because they're using all new equipment, while there was a concern with Central Business reusing our finishing devices, the staplers, trifold, things like that. And while that is, the responsibility lies with the vendor to repair, an older device is more likely to need repair, in which could be subject to a longer period of time or more often where that would be closed off and we wouldn't have access to a device. If it's constantly breaking down, or that could result in a delay to staff, to delay for staff. While we've never had an issue with service, that was an area where we rated, with Marco, that was an area we rated Central Business a little bit higher because of the assurance that they have somebody very close by. And again, we haven't had any concern with level of service, but that is a difference when you're splitting hairs and rating on a 10-point scale. 9 is still very good, but we felt that Central Business had to be rated higher because of that assurance of somebody rated or being here a couple miles away. The last piece was cost. As we costed out the proposal, there was a cost difference with Marco, providing the lowest possible price. I know there were some questions about how some of those proposals were read. It is accurate. The numbers that Sally is going to provide here in just a second, she'll outline the specifics of the cost. But in terms of, you heard about staples, those are consistent. The staples are provided in both vendor proposals. And we did have to get some assurances of those questions earlier today, but those are the same. So the analysis that we've done in terms of cost, we believe is accurate, and that would show Marco having cost difference, and so they were rated higher than Central Business in there. And at the end of the day, it came out very close. But we have a responsibility as a team to do this comprehensively and fairly, and that's the assessment that we provided is the recommendation to Marco. And if you want to update with cost.
So the proposals that we were presented with, Central Business, the annual cost of $30,638.04, or the 5-year, because we're leasing them for 5-year, was $153,190.20. Oops, sorry, that's Marco. Sorry. Central Business, the 5-year cost was $164,700. So over the 5-year span, the Marco proposal is $11,509.80 savings to the district.
And one thing I can add, when you're on a committee with Sally and Dan, they're both sharpening their pencils pretty quickly, and I didn't even have to do any of that work because they did such a great job breaking down those costs. But anything that I missed, Sally or Dan, that you want to add on as participants in the process?
Go ahead, Dan.
I guess the only thing as far as the rubric, each item in the rubric was assessed independently. It wasn't it was line by line, working your way down. Total was done at the end, and that's the number that came up with.
Jason, go ahead.
Are both contracts fixed for the 5 years? I noticed, I think, was it on Marco that said prices subject to change? Or is that irrelevant to this bid?
They're fixed cost. That was one question we did ask, too.
It is fixed. We've verified that with Marco.
Yep, follow up, Jason, go ahead.
So all of the staples, no staples stuff, our team here is still standing behind the scores here, correct? I mean, that's still relevant. The closeness of the tabulation is still relevant throughout the discussions?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Jason. No. Oh, you're good? Okay. Oh, Diane.
I was wondering if the team felt comfortable with their assessment of the nearby proximity of Central. It's sort of a subjective type of analysis, and I just wondered if you feel comfortable with Marco being able to send in somebody the morning of when there's a problem.
We can only speak to what experience we've had, and that has been no level of concern. The difference in service, somebody assurance of a couple of miles away versus potential, was why we rated one, we rated Central Business higher than the other, but we have no level of concern with getting service, a good service with either vendor. I think they would both do an excellent job.
Melissa, go ahead. Yeah, Melissa, go ahead.
I appreciate the rubric. I appreciate what the committee has done. With that, I'm looking at, though, over the course of 5 years, and I'm going to say I realize it's a lot. It's a $2,200 difference. And I appreciate going local, and I have worked with both companies in places that I've been, and I know if your copier is down and you are waiting, there has been times when a different company that is not local has come, thought they fixed it, half an hour later it's broke down again, and they're like, well, we've already left the area, you have to wait. There's something to be said for, I need it, and I need it fixed now, and they're here in town, and if it takes 3 times a day to come out and fix it, they're there, and it's gonna be done. So,
Thank you, Melissa. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, that's kind of why I asked if this tabulation is still relevant, and we heard it is. Give or take the areas, one's stronger, one's not quite as strong, and it's subjective. I go back to, it is less expensive to go with the proposed Marco, but I also feel that we're in an environment where that is so close to me that it is worth our consideration to go local. It is an $11,000 difference, I understand that. The proximity of the service is huge, but my work in some other aspects of the community, I'm a huge proponent of buying local if we're even close. I mean, I've told people that if we want things to remain in Jamestown, we're going to have to maybe pay a little more for it. And I think this is our opportunity to prove that. Stewards of taxpayers' dollars, you can make that argument there. But we also have to take into account that we're talking about a taxpayer, in a business owner. So I put a huge amount of weight on locally owned and locally serviced, and we're talking a 1-point difference on our rubric.
Gail? Yep, you look like you had a question, Gail, go ahead.
Yeah, I just saw the puzzle go off. Is this something where we're bound by who comes out on our rubric as the lowest score? And should we maybe consider having being local added to that rubric if that's what a value is? Because without it there, I feel, are we tied to the rubric we had?
So the process for any committee is to make a recommendation. We make a recommendation based on the rubric that we created, that we feel is pretty comprehensive, and the decision lies with the board. We make a recommendation to say this is what we feel is the appropriate step to take, and then the board has to make that decision. So you're not bound by the rubric. it is the recommendation that we feel is appropriate. I have an opinion.
Dan, did you, go ahead.
Yeah, and to your point about the rubric, you're right. There's nothing in our strategic plan or anything that tells us, supporting local is one of those key things. But so if we're going to be true to our strategic plan, that we would have to buy it from there. That said, no reason we can't add it to the discussion now is, again, like Dr. Leck said, it's a board decision. The rubric we had was built off of what we specified within our documentation.
Any other questions from the board? Before we vote here, any other questions or discussion? Okay. Sally, can you do a roll call vote? And then the motion is so the motion and second are to approve the copier proposal that was recommended. So it would be the Marco. So it is to approve the copier proposal for Marco. And Sally, would you do a roll call? And then I declared a conflict with this, so.
Jason Rohr.
No.
Gail Nelson.
Yes.
Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Melissa Gleason. No. Diane Hansen.
No.
Motion fails.
Motion failed, yep. Motion failed
3-2.
3-2, okay. Make sure I was having my, Jason?
I was going to make a motion, but that's probably not appropriate. That we award the bid to.
You can do that. We need copiers, so we. Jason?
I would move that we approve or accept the bid from Central Business Systems.
Second, okay, so we have a motion by Jason and a second by Melissa to approve the copy proposal provided to us by Central Business Systems as in there, okay? So we have a motion, is there a discussion? Is there a discussion? Is there a discussion? Jason?
I just want to say, again, thanks to the committee. Durnell he's not going to leave us hanging on anything, and I think we all know that. Marco's done a great job, too. I'm just really pleased that we're considering a local business.
Any other discussion? There being no further discussion, we have a motion and a second to approve the copy proposal by Central Business Systems. Sally, could you do a roll call for this as well? And again, I stated a conflict of interest.
Jason
early in the
Rohr.
meeting.
Yes.
Gail Nelson. Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Melissa Gleason. Diane Hansen. Yes. You said yeah. You said yes. Motion passes 5-0.
Motion approved. Moving on. To C, approval of food service bid. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail. Is there a second? Second by Melissa. Any discussion? And can you talk about this or Sally, just for a couple minutes? I looked through it, but I wasn't sure what I was looking at.
So in the past, you've seen food service bids. You haven't seen food service bids. We have done the state contract with these. If you remember last year, we struggled a little bit with getting to fulfill the bid from the awarded cooperative bidder. And so we decided to go back to bidding it on our own. And this was the only bidder.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Jason?
Any update on the continuation of hot lunch?
Haven't heard anything yet. Surprisingly, not everything in Washington moves fast, so I haven't heard anything new.
Thank you, Jason. So we have a motion and a second for approval of the food service bid. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Oh, sorry, got ahead of myself. Everyone said aye. Motion approved. D, approval of budget revisions. And number 1, executive summary. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail. Second by Melissa. Any discussion? Any questions for Sally? Yep, go ahead, Gail.
Thank you for the summary. That always helps. I mean, that made it a lot easier.
We have a motion and a second for approval of budget revisions and subsequent 1 executive summary. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. C, General fund balance sheet is there for your information. If you have questions, contact Sally. F, monthly financials. Is there a motion to approve the monthly financials? Motion by Dan. Second by Jason. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve monthly financials. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Nothing under personnel. 6, policy and procedures. Number 1, approval to rescind pregnancy disability leave DDAD-1. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail? Second by Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. 2, approval to rescind paternity/adoption leave DDAE. Is there a motion? Motion by Jason? Second by Gail. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Approval of the first reading of DDAE paternal leave policy and subsequent approval of DDAE-AR parental, I knew that wasn't right, parental leave regulations. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail, second by Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Approval of the second reading of FCAC head lice policy. Motion by Melissa. Second by Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor say, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Approval of the second reading of GACG educational opportunities through sponsoring entities policy. Is there a motion? Motion by Gail? Second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Approval of the second reading DDAA Family and Medical Leave Act policy. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa. Second by Gail. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Approval to rescind DDA sick leave policy and subsequent approval of the first reading of DDA sick leave policy and its attachment approval of DDA-AR sick leave requests. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa. Second by Gail. Any Dr. Leck?
Just a comment, we had a leave task force, and you might assume, oh, this has something to do with that leave. This is just an update of the policy based on School Board Association template. It doesn't represent change. It's what we do and what we have done. It's not a recommendation coming from the task force.
So we have a motion and a second for number 7, A and I. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 8, approval of the first reading of DDC unpaid leave policy. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa, second by Gail. Any discussion?
It's the same as DDA. It's just a representation of what we do.
Just what we do.
It's not
Okay.
coming from the task force.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Leck. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Approval of amended HBAA, federal fiscal compliance, and A and B. A is rescind HBAA-E, Title I fiscal and inventory requirements, and B, approval of HBAA-AR1, federal fund expenditures and inventory requirements. Is there a motion? Motion by Melissa, second by Gail. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 7, tuition. Approval of a tuition agreement for a 2nd and 5th grade Montpelier student to attend Jamestown Public Schools for the 2022 to 2023 school year. Motion by Melissa, second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Number 8, other. Nothing under other. Anyone board have anything? Okay. Items for future agenda. Dan?
Not quite sure how to handle this, but Joe had brought up about the board review of the curriculum.
Yep.
Is
Yep.
that something that, just add that?
Outline a process.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Dan. Anything else? Okay. All right. If you think of anything, contact Dr. Luck or temporarily myself here. And then
Temporarily yourself.
I'm vice president, I'm filling in, so.
Laying the foundation.
I'm filling in temporarily here for this meeting, so if you need something, please let me know, or Dr. Leck. And so, any other items, and just let us know. And now we have some meetings to be scheduled. We have a school board meeting on Monday, July 18th, 2022 at 5:15 in the Thompson Community Room at the middle school. Note that there's only one meeting for the board in July. Dr. Leck?
I might have, we might have a contract to approve. We had, a couple different contracts to approve that might precipitate a special meeting, so we can make sure we get people under contract. So,
4th of July, about noon, or?
yeah, we think that right
Barbecue?
around 8 o'clock at night, right before the fireworks. But, no, but we would like to do that sooner rather than later.
Yeah,
We just weren't able to do it for today.
Sure, yep, no, just let us know and we'll get
Do something in New
something, and, yep, and even if we have to have, a short meeting, that'd be great. Monthly superintendent evaluation for this week is Section 5, Community Relations, and Section 6, Operations and Resource Management. There being no other further business before the board, the meeting is adjourned.